Hi guys, the date is the 13th of April 2026, and this is a video about when people can't see your value as a person and like friends and relationships, they don't um they don't see your value as a person. And that can be really hard because a lot of times you can see their value. Let's say in a friendship, you're hanging out with someone, you enjoy hanging out with them, you see their value as a person, and you appreciate that. But you can see it a lot when you put in a lot of effort to hang out with people, but people don't put in as much effort to hang out with you. Is because they don't see your value. There are obviously other reasons for that, but that's a big one. And if you're in a situation where that's happening, I was in a similar situation. It sucks. It really does. It sucks. Yeah. But there's ways to kind of reframe how you look at it, which can kind of change how you act, which can lead to people seeing your value, whether that's it's like you change how you act and then everything follows. Like the first step is to stop selling yourself. And what I mean by that is, the best way I can phrase it is, when someone sells a course online, let's say they say, you can get rich by buying my course for $100 and I'll make you rich. If that person actually had the ability to make someone rich, such as himself or themselves, they would have done it. If they had that value to provide, they wouldn't have to sell you on it. And it's the same thing with your value as a person. You see, I spent a lot of time hanging out with friends trying to show them my value, try to make them like me. And what I was really doing is just selling a course. I didn't believe that I had value. Like those people, they don't believe they're rich, so they feel like they have to sell a course to become rich. I had to sell myself and sell the idea of me to get people to like me, to have value. But the funny thing about that is, if I just flip it around and say, I am a person and intrinsically I have value as a person, then that makes room for other people to see that value and appreciate that value. Like, where instead of trying to make people like me, I just actively display myself. I just go with, and you don't have to think about like actively displaying yourself and who you are. You just have to be yourself. And if you just be yourself regardless, then people will, I want to say, be attracted to you, though, like a magnet, because that is a very valuable trait. And even if you're trying to make people like you because you don't think you have value, you do have value. You have value as a person, you have value as a friend, and unless you're hurting people, then that baseline value is always there. So even if you can't see it, it still is there. That's the first thing. But the thing about not trying to prove it to people and just showing it through your actions and through everything like that is, that's just one trait to show your value. But I'm trying to say that even if you're not showing your value, it's still there, because that's something I personally struggled with a lot, and I had to question myself a lot. Do I have value as a person? And that, those were some hard times. But I got into a situation recently with friends, and they, I mean, kind of a trauma dump, but my whole life, nobody has really put effort into hanging out with me. But I don't blame them, because it's kind of a weird thing, but when everybody is having the same issue with you, usually they're not the problem. Usually the common factor is you, and that's a hard pill to swallow. Let me tell you, that is not easy to admit, but that's how it is. And so I started looking at what I was doing, and instead of just being me, I was like the friend who, they mentioned they were having a party, and I was like, oh, can I come? Like, it's a bit silly, but it's like, it's unhealed wounds of people not liking me unless I show them my value. I don't really know where those wounds came from, but they're there, and then I was displaying that again. And the big thing is just setting up that boundary. If someone doesn't see my value enough to ask me to hang out with me again, then, I'm not going to ask them to hang out. I'm going to be okay with that, because it's better off for both of us. It's better off for them, because they clearly don't want to hang out with me or have a relationship with me, and it's better for me because I shouldn't be hanging out with people who don't see my value. That's not good for me. And that's the big mindset shift. And then, so now you're in a position where you've just cut everybody off, and no, you didn't even cut everybody off. You stopped begging for people's attention, and now you're alone. And now you're sitting there and you're thinking, man, this is worse than begging for people's attention. I want to go back to that. But the shift that you have to do in that position is face the problem. The problem was you couldn't see your value as a person, so you felt like you had something to prove. So what you need to do is you need to take this time alone. This was meant to be. You were meant to be alone. You were meant to put up these boundaries and stop reaching out to people who didn't want to hang out with you, which made you end up alone. But this is good, because you need to be alone. You need to get to know yourself. You need to separate yourself from the social media, the electronics, and actually just be with yourself every day and enjoy your own company. And the more you do that, the more you'll start to see your value as a person. And then you can start moving back into, maybe you'll never get back with that old group of friends. Maybe after your time alone, they'll send you a message, hey, where you been? Let's hang out. And then you can show them, that new value, inner self-worth you have as a person. Or they don't reach out, and that's kind of the position I'm in. And so what I'm doing now is I just go to places where I like doing stuff. Like, I like playing card games, so I go to card shops and play cards and meet people there. I like doing certain sports. I like going to the beach, so I go to the beach and meet people there, and the kind of thing with meeting people and making new friends, especially when you're older, is when you're younger, you kind of just click. But when you're older, there's a lot more factors. People put a lot more boundaries on friends and limits, and which I guess is good in a way, but it's also, you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with you may not find your lifelong friend today. You may not find them tomorrow. But this kind of ties back to memento mori in Stoicism, where it's like, you don't know how long you're going to have. You don't know if you're going to die tomorrow. You don't know if you're going to die in 3 months. Don't know if you're going to die in 40 years. You don't know. You don't know the future. So if you spend every day looking for a lifelong friend and are disappointed that you didn't get it, that is kind of presumptuous to assume that you'll have that long. So it's about appreciating the small things and appreciating the small conversations you have on the beach or on the bus, or, you know, the small compliments you get and you give. And yeah. And you just gotta take it one step at a time, because it's not gonna come fast, and it's not gonna be like, oh, you cut everybody off, you start showing your value, and then people are swarming you. It's not like that. It takes time, it takes effort, and it's like, it's not an instant thing, but it's something that if you value it, if you value being your true, authentic self unapologetically, and you're okay with the path that being your true, authentic self will lead you down, then it's something that I think is really valuable, and it's been on track for me. I mean, like, a big thing with these videos is I make them while they're happening, because I think memory and perception gets changed over time, and when I think back to this moment, it will be different. But as I'm going through it, as I've just like started showing my value as a person and stopped hanging out with all the old people I knew, old friends and that, and now, you know, you get to kind of see how it's going and my plans for the future and what's just happened and what's happening now. And I hope this helps somebody, you know, who doesn't see their value, because, you know, that's we're in the same boat. But yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to cover for this video. That's the end of the video.